Hello, gentlemen. How are you?
Good. Good to be back. Happy Thanksgiving. Belated.
Like a month later or whenever you listen.
Yeah,
to
this is probably 2 weeks, 3 weeks later.
Yeah,
You going biking? You have bicycles all over your
I
shirt
do.
there,
Yeah, I've
Brad.
got bikes. I like things with two wheels.
You do. It's like polka dot bicycles.
I know. It's kind of a cool shirt, actually. I think. I don't know. That's
Very
just me.
nice.
It's a little nerdy, but
Very
definitely
nice.
cool.
A little Poindexter.
I don't know when we'll release this, a couple weeks, but we'll be close to Christmas.
Yes.
Yeah, very close. Yeah. Merry Christmas.
Are you guys ready for the holiday season?
I think it's, yes, as far as celebrating Christmas, but it's just not, I'm just tired of buying. Like, this is going to be a light Christmas. And I think that's probably the general consensus. I know, Black Friday was light and
It was.
I'm wondering, and I don't think it's just supply chain issues. I think it's just kind of getting back to what is, we're just tired of consuming. I don't know. I don't know about you.
Maybe it's me. Maybe it's my inner Grinch, but I can't push myself to feel Christmassy like I normally do.
Really?
Do you guys feel that way?
It
or-
feels different to me too,
Doesn't
but
it?
I assume because I just took a 2-week drive to New York through Thanksgiving and that kind of stuff for a wedding, and I equate it to that because we weren't able to get our Christmas tree and all the decorations up and all that kind of stuff, and we were driving through, that whole time. So
I don't know what
we're
it is.
still. I don't know.
I have neighbors that obviously we live close to each other, Brad, that seem very Christmassy, but I just can't, I don't know. I don't know if it's COVID or just everything that's been going on. It's just, I can't get excited about it. I don't know.
Well, last year I remember everyone was like excited to do Christmas, right? Because it was the joy and it was a change and a relief and
Right.
all that kind of stuff, and it was all happening really early. I loved that.
Yeah.
And I think that should be happening this year because this year's not that much different.
Yeah. I'm sure it'll be fine, and I'm sure I'll get in the swing of things, but
What gets you in the Christmas spirit usually?
That's right.
I'm liking listening to Christmas music. Like that's the motivation that starts it, right after Thanksgiving.
Have you put up a tree?
No.
Oh, maybe that's
definitely part
I
of it.
just can't pull myself to get up in the attic, get it out,
Really?
put everything up. But I know we're going to do it this weekend. I just think maybe for me and for a lot of people, it's just so exhausting that we're hitting a season where we're going to get a nice long break. It seems like things are turning the corner, and I'm just ready to just okay, let's just chill out.
Yeah.
I'm not want to work and go through this like you said. Let's go fight at the shopping centers and go online and
sounds
hope you
horrible.
get stuff in time and buy a bunch of stuff and dealing with inflation. What's going to happen next year, which I guess is a good segue into what we may want to talk about. But maybe it's that. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe. I think that's,
Maybe I'm just a grouch.
yeah, to me,
We're wearing a green shirt today.
we don't have a lot going on this Christmas. Like, we're not traveling and we don't have any, but it feels good. It feels good just to kind of relax.
It does.
And
Feels
and
good.
so I'm excited about that for sure.
Yeah. So I mentioned inflation.
Yeah,
I know it's kind of it's in the news. I don't know that everybody, excuse me. I don't know that everybody is feeling the effects of it yet, or if they will, but I think it's a good time of year to start talking about 2022 in your business and your agency, et cetera. And how do you prepare yourself for inflation? It's been It's been a while since we've had really bad inflation. in our country.
yeah.
Speaking of, you guys are talking about Black Friday and obviously we're in e-commerce, and I've got some stats. These are not my stats. These are from a third party, but it looks like, retail traffic dropped over 28%.
Yeah.
A brick and
from
mortar?
the pre-pandemic brick
Okay.
and mortar.
Okay.
Cyber Monday decreased by almost 2%, which is, let's call it even, right? And there were an out of stock was an interesting one, up 170%,
Mm-hmm.
right? And almost 300%. low stock, out of stock. And then I have some stats on sales.
What about Black Friday? How did it compare to last year? Do you have that? I know you said Cyber
this
Monday
one
was
report
2%.
that I'm looking at is Cyber Monday.
Well, it's only 2% difference. That's
basically
pretty
flat.
even.
There were other stats that I saw that said Black Friday was less than last year.
But if you subtract the 28%,
but also we're going to talk about some supply chain stuff too. But like that may be spending, but it also, I know we had a concerted effort to spread out the sales, and consumers were aware of potential shipping issues, even if not supply chain issues, shipping issues, which there are shipping issues, right? So sales were spread out, and that only tracks that one day. Black Friday, Cyber Monday.
Yeah.
So it's not tracking the entire shopping season.
Yeah.
Because it's not over yet. So we'll see come, Christmas or January what that looked like. But we are seeing decreased numbers in those places. And, I don't think it's coincidental that it coincides with some of the inflation and some of the other things going on.
Not to throw a wrench in, but we've seen a decrease in sales in the last couple of months, but we can't quite pinpoint all the time if it's inflation and the economy, or we know for a fact that with what's going on with Facebook changes and privacy and everything, I would say impulse buys are being hit pretty hard, meaning those retailers that were e-commerce retailers that were using Facebook targeting specifically are seeing a decline in conversions on Facebook. And I think that's partial because of what we might be seeing inflation-wise, but I think it's a greater having to do with a lot of the changes in targeting and algorithms and OS and things like that.
Yeah, I mean, we've been seeing that effect too. I will say all the brands that we manage saw a significant increase. I think the lowest was like 18% over last year. On those sale days, this was actually specifically Black Friday. But the variable has been, okay, what does it contribute? How much does the iOS thing affect it and that kind of stuff? Because
Google's doing fine.
Because we're seeing lower sales from non-customers, right? So like more repeat. Less non-customers,
which talks into like impulse buys.
Yeah, it's funny. It was Cyber Monday, then it became now this year it's Cyber Week. It seems like
dude, that happened a few years
I know.
ago.
Now it's going to be
we switched it on you.
I want a Cyber truck.
It's Cyber Week now.
Oh, I'm waiting for Cyber Month.
Oh, Cyber Month.
Yeah, so
Cyber Month's coming.
that.
Cyber Month's coming next year, baby.
I want to take advantage of that 15% off discount code.
Cyber Month's coming, and then it's going to be Cyber Year.
I'm waiting for the Cyber truck.
And then it's going to be Cyber truck.
There you go. Cyber truck.
Did you see that? Not to rabbit hole, but did you see Tesla released a kid's cyber cart, mini cyber
let's
truck?
just be honest. They should have done that a long time ago. That should have been the first thing they released because remember those Power Wheels?
Yeah.
I used to have a Power Wheels. And we souped it up.
It's called Big Wheels when we were little.
Oh, bigger. Yeah.
Well,
I think
you probably had a Power Wheel.
Is that the one you run? You
had the things.
You slam on the brakes and you can spin.
No, we souped it up. We had like the super power mode and everything, and then we used to. We got hurt on it quite a bit, but Tesla should totally come out with them because that's the best toy.
I know.
It's awesome. Well, getting back to inflation, first, Brad, you wanted to discuss the effects of inflation on business.
Well, I mean, as we're all seeing the numbers and trying to figure out if inflation's hitting our pocketbook at this point, both personally and for our business, I just wanted to discuss how do you prepare for that, and what does that look like if inflation gets so bad? Does that mean that we're going to have to our salaries going up, or how do we hedge against inflation, and how do we do things to prepare now before you get to the point where we're all feeling it. We're definitely going to feel it. It's something, and if you haven't felt it yet, you will. And just trying to discuss this, unpack it a little bit. I don't have all the answers, but I'd love to see what you guys think about it.
What are you planning for 2022 as you anticipate potential effects on your business? Is there I know I have some ideas of some basic things that we can all do as business owners or people who work in business, but for you specifically, Brad, at Anthem Republic? Are you guys doing anything, or have you changed your philosophy, or are you being intentional about
We
things?
haven't changed much of our philosophy besides trying to look at our cash, because cash is what's being deflated, right? So if printing 25% of the total circulation in the last year and a half of cash, the feds have just printed like crazy. What it does is all of your cash outside of other assets that are deflationary, it gets hit. So if, let's just say you had just do round numbers off. If you had $1 million of cash sitting in your business for operations, that's the buying power now is worth $775,000. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So it's like, what do you do to hedge against that? Where do you find assets? I mean, that's one of the reasons why the real estate market just went nuts, is because people are trying to put money into something that is going to go up in value versus keep it in cash. And
that and the great migrations.
In migrations, yeah, to certain areas because of people leaving certain areas of the country, moving to other areas. But and so, trying to hedge against that and looking at like, will it get to the point where, if, let's just face it, they say the CPI, which is the I'm not an expert at this, but it's the bucket that they use. They put different assets in there to see what the average inflation rate is. That's really not really real. It's kind of like they put stuff in there that makes it look the best, but it's not what the average family actually gets hit with. It's not the expenses of the average family. Right. Because they're saying that the expense of the average family, the inflation's between 25 and 30% this year. So when it starts hitting the family and it already is. I mean, you can't buy gas or whatever else, right?
I mean, I think I have a Christmas tree that I bought from Costco in 2018.
Yeah.
It's $200 more at Costco today.
Yeah.
So
same tree.
Same tree. Yeah. And that's what I'm talking about.
All that kind of stuff.
That's what I'm talking about. And it's
I made money on my Christmas tree. Who'd have thought?
You should put it online. Make a couple
I know.
$100.
Who'd have thought?
Facebook Marketplace is probably going to be loaded with
Christmas trees.
I have some wood, some floorboards set aside for an area of my house that is unfinished that we're going to finish. And I actually bought those in around 2018 as well.
Oh, you're sitting on gold.
I bought them at $6 a sheet. They're now $60-something a sheet.
Man.
You should put those in your investment portfolio.
Gold.
Seriously, it's gold.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
That's what you're talking about.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying is, how do you put your money into something that can survive this? And at the same time, like, questions like, once the family gets hit, I read a statistic a year or two ago that 62% of Americans can't pull together $2,000 in an emergency fund if they needed it. 62% of Americans. That means that when it gets tight and their household expense goes up 30%, people are just going to have a tough time. And so at that point,
I believe that stat is not dissimilar for business, just adjusted for business. So it's about, I think somewhere around that percentage of businesses only have a month or so of capital.
Yeah.
So they're living month to month.
I mean, the feds are talking about some things, like they're talking this week about bond buybacks and negative interest rates. Like, what does that mean? Does that mean I can go get a loan and I make money on it? Like,
yeah, technically, wouldn't that mean that you pay to give a loan?
Wouldn't that be great? I mean, if you could get a loan for zero and buy something that is deflationary. I mean, there's a lot of maybe some opportunities that come out of this whole thing too, if you're smart and you look at it from that point of view. But I'm just waiting for. I mean, I haven't personally. I've been feeling it here and there a little bit, but it hasn't hit hard yet, but I do believe it's going to. And I'm not trying to be, a red flag waiver.
No, they lag, right? And I think
these are all lagging indicators.
Why you need to get ahead of it, right? They lag and they actually creep in 1 degree at a time.
Yeah,
and to where you look back, 5 years later, and you'll say, "Wow, my costs have increased
Yeah.
a ton, but you didn't feel it in any one given way. Typically, that's how it happens. Like, you might notice it at the gas station. You might notice it with some of the purchases that I just mentioned. Like, wow, that increased. That's pretty crazy. But when it comes to the big aggregate, you're not going to notice it. And as a business, you're not going to notice it either until you look back, looking at your P&L 2-3 years later,
Yes.
and you're going to say,
Holy cow.
wow, our costs increased, our profits
Yeah.
went down. And you want to be shooting for over 30% profit. That's what I believe. And so you gotta maintain that. That is a requirement. It's not like, we talked about this before, it's not to pad your bank account necessarily, although I think your business should serve you. But you need to maintain that just to be able to do business, do it well, invest into R&D, like continue to serve it, all that kind of stuff. So you can't do that if you're not ahead of this. If you're not ahead of it, it will creep up on you. You'll look back on it and you'll say, okay, wow, my costs really increased and I didn't make a lot of money. And, when did that happen?
And what has not increased in the last probably 10 or 15 years based on current inflation is salaries have not really increased.
Yes.
And things of that nature. So they're bound to, because it's just the average American won't be able to survive without some type of increase or something. Again, and then, what's going to happen then. And so I'm just trying to kind of think about it a little bit, trying to be prepared to like what ifs kind of, and try to look at it from like a point of view of, I want to make sure that our employees don't feel that pain. I want to make sure that they feel secure, and everyone does in their own business, right? So I think that's one of the things I want to make sure.
Can I challenge you on something?
Yeah, go ahead.
I've been challenged on this, but it's not your job to make sure that your employees don't feel something, right? Sometimes it's good that they do. So just say that.
No, I understand that part of it, but I
what
just
you're
want to make
saying
sure
is you want to make sure that you are competitive with your salaries.
Correct.
And that they're not feeling like you're underpaying them, and therefore you're going to lose productivity, and therefore if you lose an employee in the middle of inflation, that's not good for you.
Because I obviously the increase of salary, obviously just to be generous is good, but it's competitiveness. Yeah. And so if salaries go up and all of a sudden there's competitiveness, I want to make sure that we're competitive. And we're
feeling that right now.
Really?
We're going through and adjusting salaries across the board because it to your point, salaries don't always keep up with inflation in every industry.
Yeah.
And they should to a certain degree. And to Ken's point, there's that fine line, right? Like if someone hasn't managed their funds well and they're feeling a little bit,
all I'm saying it is that fine line.
Right.
Of like, there's this feeling of responsibility that we have.
Yes.
And the truth is sometimes you're not responsible, right?
Yeah.
And people have to, and so there's a certain amount of responsibility, but there's a certain amount of like protection that may actually be damaging.
Yeah.
But that's another topic for another day.
Let's talk about some practical things that business owners or participants in business, solopreneurs can do to potentially just prepare. We're all about preparation. We're all about looking in the future and forecasting. I wrote down a couple of things as we were thinking through this topic. The first thing that I said is pay close attention to your productivity, meaning what are the things that you and your team do on a daily, weekly basis that's actually generating money versus just things that are done because they've always been done that way, or you've gotten a habit of doing them, and that maybe you can either change, adjust, cut out, just productivity in general. What do you guys think about that?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think you're right. You're talking about cost, right? Make sure cost is efficient.
Right.
Because when you talk about your time, that is part of cost, and I think making sure that you're doing things efficiently, like we did a big round of looking at that in Q3 of this year, because we realized like, wow, we had some adjustment inside the team, and we took an opportunity to look at how we execute on projects and things like that, and I started to look at this, and we started to look at it together from the outside and say, wow, this one thing that needs to get done. We talk about systems a lot, right? And so, but systems, sometimes the systems need to serve you, but sometimes they can get overdone and they become bureaucratic. Once they become bureaucratic, they actually they kind of work as a system, but they are not efficient. And something very simple can take a long time. I know, Bob, you've talked about that before. Is like, hey, in order to get this done, we need to get the approval of this manager, and then it goes over to here, and then it goes over to here, and then over here. When the thing that was getting asked could have just been a judgment call that got that done.
Empower people more.
Yeah.
So. Yeah, I think those efficiencies are critical in that.
I think also look at your expenses and try to identify ones that might get hit more from inflation, and then maybe the cost might go up, and try to be prepared to look at alternatives or just keep an eye on it and try to figure out which ones of those, if they do go up, which ones have gone up, how much, and if they're necessary or they can be circumvented with a different type of approach or something. So
we buy a bunch of tools and things like you guys do to help deliver our projects and services. And I've recently, without much notice, maybe they did, but anyway, it's like several of them have increased in cost in the last couple of months.
Yeah, take a look at your subscriptions and service contracts and really do a deep dive. Because we all, over the years, you'll find, well, we've got this phone system that we've just paid, or we've got these reporting tools online that we've just paid X amount per month. And you just start inventorying those things and say, how could we cut or renegotiate? Or some of those things are very, they become commoditized over time. So the cost and the technology is a lot more accessible and affordable. I remember over the years how many different IP-based phone systems and offices that I've used that you're paying $200 a month, and then 2 years later, you're still paying $200 a month, but you find out, we could have this for $75
exactly.
a month.
Sometimes you just make a phone call and you can get on a new plan.
Yeah.
And,
the challenge with this, actually executing that kind of stuff, it takes time.
It does.
Like, and we have a list of things that we need to go through and optimize and service and that kind of stuff. And it takes time,
but what we're talking about is potentially saving thousands of dollars a year.
Oh, you literally can save several $1,000s a month a lot of times.
Exactly.
Yeah. Another thing is focus on cash flow. I know you talk a lot about this, Ken, and what you've done from your collections and invoicing. Maybe just give a brief high level on that, just to like how, with what you've done, explain it, and then how that is a real positive thing in times like inflation.
Yeah, I mean, we've done deep dives in this in other episodes, so you can go back and listen to it. But some people would say cash is not king, but cash flow is king. And there's actually real wisdom there that when I started business, did not. You're taught, like, you look at your P&L and your balance sheet, and you all that kind of stuff, and you invoice and you see money's coming in, right? Like, but money is not in, right? When you invoice it, it shows up in your books, typically, right? With most people, if you're on, I guess, an accrual, which most people are, and it shows up in your books, but you actually don't have that money. And I think with agencies and with a lot of service businesses, I know that cash flow is the thing that is one of the number one killers of those businesses. It's one of the number one points of pressure on the business as well. And so when we're looking at inflation and inflation proofing our companies, we need to decrease costs, we need to increase income, and we need to speed up how fast we get that cash. And so I'm a big proponent of going to electronic payment that is billed in advance, monthly.
A pull rather than
a pull, not a. And there's ways that you can do that so that it's done and done well, and everyone knows what's going on, all that kind of stuff. Basically, where you're in control of it, just like any other vendor on the face of the planet, right? When you go to the restaurant, they don't send you an invoice and say, "Pay me when you get to
pay me in 90 days."
Pay me in 90 days.
Right.
I'll gladly pay
By the
you
way,
today for
the other side of that is, if you are going to do terms like net terms, which I don't think anyone should do personally, I don't do those. If you do them, just be aware that you're giving a loan away.
Yeah.
Like, you're giving a loan, and in those 90 days, that cash is very valuable to you. right? So if you're not going to have that cash for 90 days and you're going to also put out, so your gap is even bigger, right? Like, let's say you charge $100,000 or something and you don't get that $100,000 for 90 days, you lose the opportunity cost of that $100,000.
That's a quarter of a year. With inflation on top of that, you're losing money.
And let's say if your margin is 25%, you're spending $75,000. So now you have a $175,000 gap, right? That is that you're not able to take advantage of.
Yeah.
That is insane to me. How anyone does that is crazy. I mean, unless you're a giant business, I think it came from giant corporations who could sustain, they just have so much cash available and that can move around that it's not a big deal. When you talk about small business can't do that.
Well, it comes from exactly what you're saying. It's like, it's a mirror, because these big companies that are hiring you, they have the same cash flow issues as well. So the net terms,
that's how they manage it.
Net terms came from, well, we don't have the cash, so we'll pay you over time when we get our cash. And it's just an ever, it's an ever.
Also, that was before the digital age where you could make a payment. It took a while for the payment to actually arrive. So, that's, it's funny. We do that. We do a little bit of both of what you're talking about, but we do have net payments, and it's really difficult to convince clients otherwise that are that their whole business runs on that, and not to sound arrogant, but I think there's a way through in every situation because we've done that. We made the decision we're not doing that. Yeah.
So we're going to either have to lose business or we're going to have to convince someone that it's better to work with us and change how they do everything. And the surprising thing is, if you position it the right way, and you, more often than not, much more often than not, like the majority, if not almost every time, there's a way to do it without net payment terms.
Yeah.
Because look, every business has a credit card and every business spends money immediately that way. It's just the mindset of how they're going to do it and how they categorize you. Anyway, all that to say is I think that's a big one, because if you are going to do net terms, give the loan and charge based on what that money is worth to you, right? Like increase the cost or charge interest. Maybe actually, I guess with negative interest rates, like the client gets paid to do that. But no, I think you need to be smart about that money, and I think that to me is probably an area that a lot of businesses. I bet I talk to a lot of agencies about this. The reason I'm just continuing on this is like there's a belief that it can't be done. And because it's always been done this way. Right. And that is bull.
I love
that. It's not true. I'm just telling you, it's not true. You got to challenge that thing.
You've done it.
I've done it, and I've helped other people do it. And it's so important to the health of your business to just brush it off as this is we have no choice here. We have to do it this way. And then worse, a lot of businesses go into debt to service that gap. Right? Like they get
a line of
credits to cover, which then they're paying interest on. Yeah. You took that $175,000 and then the opportunity cost and then the interest that you get charged to get a loan to give. That's insane to me. Crazy. Absolutely crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, another thing that we have kind of going along this same thing with productivity is automate wherever possible. I think the AI technology, the times we live in, it's the greatest opportunity for businesses to really find ways to save money and be more efficient with your time. So automation, whether it comes to, the collections or finance related aspects, or just the work related things, whether it comes to, AI copywriting, whether it comes to reporting tools that automate all that kind of stuff. What do you guys have any thoughts on that?
We've been doing that all along. I think it's just a matter of taking every quarter, just going through with a fine tooth comb and making sure again that everything is, the prices haven't got too crazy, or just keep an eye on it. But definitely always think about how you can optimize through AI and through other types of automation for sure. It's something you should be doing all along.
It's the positive side of the changes that we have. We talk a lot about the scary things, but we live in a great time where so many things can be done better with computers and machines and AI than humans, which ultimately will save money and be more efficient.
I think my biggest concern is that not just the inflation portion of it, but the the first budget that gets cut typically within a corporation is marketing. A lot of times when a company is struggling or finances are tight for a company, and so I kind of fear the repeat, of 2008, 2009, when man it was tough in the marketing world. Just because a lot of companies put things on pause and didn't continue, and so they're trying to be as lean as possible. And that's going to hurt all businesses trickling down. So it's going to be an interesting time for sure. I'm just thinking about right now about things that I can do. But I think during the holidays here, I'm going to be more proactive. I'm going to have some downtime. It might be a good time for businesses, if you're a small business, to really take this time of the holidays, maybe where it's maybe a little slower in your agency, to really spend some time looking at this, because it does take somebody to kind of work with your financial people or a controller and try to figure out some things. And I would say that just talking to people, talking to your lead staff, talking to your control, if you have a controller or other folks, talking to them and trying to get what they believe is the right, where they feel like the sentiment is, where they feel like things that they can put their head around and start to get some ideas together. And so that you have a plan beforehand, you're not reactive, but you're proactive.
I think another thing too is we have to get real about debt. If your business or your company has debt, I think you've got to address that.
Yeah.
I think it's in good times, it's real easy to let that be down on the bottom line of the priority sheet. But
and debt should always be valuable to you. Like if your company's in debt, you should be making more money on that debt. You know what I'm saying? It should be something that's valuable. It's a tool. It's not
used as leverage.
It's a leverage tool. It's not meant to be a saving tool. If it's saving you, then that's where you need to double check.
And
yourself.
That line that you just described is where I would say almost all people that get in trouble.
Yeah.
Right. If you're, and it can be hard. Sometimes people don't know those two things, the difference between using it as leverage or using it as savings.
Yeah, it should always be used for an opportunity.
Right.
And if that is even going after business, or let's say we get into a little recession where it is an opportunity because now you can actually go after business during that time that you may have not. It should always be used for an opportunity.
That being said, I don't know if this is on your list, but one on my list is optimizing your finances in a way that you may use some debt to cover some things. So what I mean is, like, we talk about, or I talk about, like, I think that there's a value in having a year of runway, at minimum 1 quarter. But if you're holding that in cash, that cash is decreasing by 30, let's call it 30%, with dilution and all that kind of stuff. That's not an official stat. And by the way, none of this is actually financial advice. Obviously. But I think that's a decent estimate. Brad, feel free to disagree with me, like that your cash needs to be 30% more valuable.
Yes.
Right? Because it's been diluted.
Yes.
So if you're holding all that money in cash, it's probably not the smartest thing to do, but that means you have to take on some risk. And so, like, maybe slimming down some of that cash, putting it in a safe investment, because maybe there's not really any safe investment that actually produces a return right now. But certain investments that can maybe do that, and maybe leverage debt to cover.
Yes.
In the instance that you need it, and then you bring cash back and cover it. Like, you don't go more than what you have.
Yeah, so you always have the ability to get rid of that debt, but you're using the cash smarter. And I think that's the key. Is for me, it's about getting cash off the table and putting it into something that will hold and go up in value, not in more than just the inflation. If you can, or at least equal to the inflation rate, because then you're breaking even. People are always like, oh, the stock market in the last couple of years have been going crazy, and it may continue to go up, but it's only going up because of inflation. It's only going up because
it's a double-edged sword.
Exactly. So the key is, they always say that the S&P 500 basically is just an indication of inflation. So if it goes up 15%, it's been going up 15% for the last, 7 or 8, 10 years. Mm-hmm. That's just the inflation rate. And this year it's going up, almost 30%, the S&P. Maybe you just need to buy an S&P fund and put your money into that, because that's going to continue to go up with inflation, where if you keep it in the US dollar, it's going to get hit hard.
That's a good point.
And so there's different things you want to do. You want to be smart. You want to talk to your financial advisor. Like Ken said, we're not financial advisors. We're just lame people who are trying to
practice one in our side time.
Yeah. And so but I'm looking right now at the cash and go, okay, how much cash do I need for the quarter, and how do I get that? I want to get that cash out so that it works for me outside of that, or use it for something in the business that I know is going to have return on investment. Buy something for the business, or hire a new staff member so that we could go after different business to grow it. So I think one of the things I'm just going to have to, make sure that the cash is working. The cash needs to be working.
You need cash, and it needs to work.
Yes.
Like if you have no cash or not enough cash, then that's a problem.
Well, that's where all these other tips come in. Is you do have it, you're sitting on it, you just have to find it in your business, whether it comes from productivity, automating things, assessing all your subscriptions and your contracts. You can find thousands of dollars in a business. Most people can, if they take the time to do it. And I think one thing we haven't talked about, and I would say maybe this is the last one on our list, is evaluate your rates.
Well, I was going to say, the last thing needs to be increase cash.
Right. So evaluate rates. If you're too high, it's going to hurt you during this time.
Yeah.
But if you're too low, it's really going to hurt you during this time.
Yeah. And the thing is, you don't probably want to be raising rates when everything else is raising.
Right.
Because now you're just one of the ones they're going to, it's probably easier to do it incremental, a little bit at a time, like once a year for the next 3 or 4 years.
It's a good time right now before, like you said, if it does hit in a major way, and we don't know. Now's the time to raise them, or a better word is adjust them. And
like
go to, and any client will understand, because they're dealing with it themselves. Hey, we have not adjusted our rates in X amount of years. And it's going to go up a few dollars an hour. Just want to let you know. And it's also a great time to say, hey, we're going to do this in 2 months. Would you like to lock into last year's rate for the next year? I'll give you the same rate last year if you lock in for a year contract.
Right.
Those are great opportunities to do that as well.
Also, just because of the beginning of the year, it kind of makes sense. So I think, for everyone, it's more.
Can I talk about a little hack?
Yeah.
The Ken hack.
No, with retainers, right? 12-month retainers.
Yeah.
I think it's pretty common to do them on the calendar month.
Yeah.
I've found that just not doing them on the calendar month and doing them in more optimal months where they start and specifically renew on bigger months of the year is better for you.
Give an example.
Like
of that.
January 1st or what? Like
start and renew in the spring.
Oh, like a quarterly, May. Like right on the quarter?
No. I'm saying yearly, 12 months, but like the spring renewal versus a December renewal, because
they don't have so much they're competing with.
There's so much going on.
Yeah.
And it's really hard to have to go through a bunch of contract renewals
at the same
on
time.
Christmas.
So what you do, so if you have a client and you basically say, hey, you're on a 12-month, but you started, let's just say they started in November, they're going to be renewed in the spring. So the first year is not 12 months.
13 or 14 months or whatever, or like do the trial month period and then whatever. But and typically the way we do it is those contracts, I realize it's a different subject, but I just think it's actually been something that's been really beneficial for a bunch of reasons. It reduces headache around now, December, when people are just trying to you need to be. It's one of the times a year where I think that for you and your family and your general life, you need to feel like the most stable versus the most unstable.
Yes, I agree.
Just for quality of life, right? And then And so they've got two hacks. One is like, that is not, in my experience, an optimal renewal period. So we almost do no calendar ones, so that we don't have to worry about like going through the motions of trying to figure out how the renewal is and adjusting, and then January 1st it changing or being changed or whatever it is. So that's one. The second one is I diversify when those renewals happen. So like having every retainer renew on the same month every year is to me a big risk. So that's just spread it out.
Yeah, that way you don't.
I would like to end or wind down the program with this, because I think it's important. But I also think that it's more personal application to all of us, is that in this time where we may have inflation, we may have a change of the way we see things. We haven't even got into crypto and decentralized finance in the next few years. But all of that to say, don't lose an abundance mindset in the midst of this.
Mm-hmm.
It's really, really easy, because I've done it myself as a business owner in the past, to really begin to see the world in a real hard light, negative light. Oh my gosh, we're going to go through this, and start being reactionary versus being proactive in the middle of that. And so I would just say too, be wise, prepare, know that this is a possibility, but two, don't get into a lack mentality that says, the pieces, there's only so many pieces of the pie, and if I don't get mine, then I'm not going to have it.
Yeah.
I mean, there's always more where it came from.
Well, here's one silver lining in all this. I think you're right. And by the way, if you get into a lack mindset, it's really hard. It's typically a downward spiral.
Well, you will always see what you're looking for.
Right. Always so you're probably on a spiral down, and that's not good. So it is hard. It's a mental exercise, and it has to be conditioned, and it's hard, and that's part of being a leader and an owner. I think you need to. That's important. You have to be intentional about it. But the kind of silver lining in this is like, there is 30% more cash out there.
Yes.
Right. And it's being spent and wants to be spent and all that kind of stuff. And so the economy, the one upside of it is there's not less cash, there's more cash. And so
if there's anything we've learned from COVID,
and there's probably going to be increasing.
Yeah.
Now to the detriment of other things like inflation, that kind of stuff, it's probably going to be increasing in the cash circulation. But for a business, for people, there's probably more cash out there for you.
Yeah, I was just going to say, if there's anything we've learned from COVID, it's that we can be resilient. We can, I hate to use the word so overused, we can pivot, and we can be prosperous in the middle of it and find ways to think differently. And so I just want to encourage people that, yes, this is a real possibility, and yes, you need to be wise in doing these things, but it doesn't mean you can't have the best year that you're going to have next year.
Absolutely.
And these things might actually be things that you put into place long term. And so see that opportunity. But there's going to be a ton of business in the next coming years because of what's happening with technology and just the world in general. So don't lose that. Don't fall into fear and scarcity and say, because your business, there will be a lot of businesses that fail and go out of business in the next year or two. I believe that because of this.
Yeah.
Because they either didn't do these things, or they're just living with, not take risks. So be willing to take risks. Stay positive in the midst of it. Share your knowledge freely with other people. Keep doing those things that really
and also
train you to
help
do
your
that.
clients too when they
Yes.
when they struggle through things like this, because I know that's really we've through COVID we had some clients who struggled, and we stuck with them and really tried to help them out as much as possible.
Yes.
And I think that builds a lasting relationship. And so I think there's some we all got to pull in together and do it together.
For sure.
So.
Sure. Any last comments?
No,
It's been a good discussion, guys.
Yeah. No.
Until next time.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.
See you.